Son Excellence,
His Excellency, the President of the Republic, the Prime Minister, the Speaker of the National Assembly, distinguished ministers, dear invitees, dear participants, good morning and welcome. I am very delighted to meet you at this ceremony, and it's a thing of pride for me to meet you once again in Lomé for this edition of AFIS. And on behalf of Jeune Afrique, I welcome you. For those who don't know me, I am Ramatoulaye, Director of AFIS, and I have a common heritage with you, finance, and I've been busy on it for the past 15 years. We're going to be here for 2 days to discuss and network and have discussions.
la phrase qu'a prononcée l'un de nos participants.
AFIS is not a talk show. That is what one of our participants said last year. AFIS is not a talk show. AFIS is a platform for public-private dialogue throughout the year. And as the Chairman Director of Jeune Afrique said, it says that AFIS has 4 challenges to surmount. That is, we have to raise African finance to world level, and we have to make financial services be at the center of the Africa continental free trade area, and also to ensure the development of Africa and the real economy. And finally, the 4th challenge is to give a voice to African finance during international conversations. And at this point in time, it's very, very crucial, since we have persistent inflations, we have issues of liquidity, financing of SMEs, and also refinancing. We are convinced that we have to take advantage of this situation instead of standing by and letting the bus leave us behind, because Africa is a new frontier. And our industry has, for a long time, at least past 3 years, know that we can create a world-class financial industry, because when you look at the fact that the amount of money we have in dollar terms, we can penetrate financial markets, we can deepen financial markets, and also we can take advantage of technological innovation. So it means that we have to continue to reason together towards attaining this transition, which is our common aspiration. Our industry, I repeat, our industry can do it. It can demonstrate. It has demonstrated this for the past 3 years. We are able to resist external shocks. The last result of the last 3 quarters can attest to that, regardless of the decrease in the capacity of some actors. Our industry has proven that it can use sophisticated instruments, and actually we have, to the extent that we have access today, and our industry is as ambitious as ever. So we must not lose a single second towards drawing the attention of international players, for them, make them know that we are veritable continental champions and that we are poised to become international champions. We are always working towards regional integration. It is on course, but we have to accelerate the pace in order to meet this challenge, AFIS is with you for us to be catalysts for our common ambitions. I'm going to give you 3 examples that emanated from the last edition. After the discussions of Basel III during the roundtable, one of our partners here was mandated to produce an impact study on about the period. Michael Balou gave his first speech here last year and urged commercial banks and drew their attention of these systems to their responsibility towards establishing an African system. Today, we have the honor of witnessing the first major guarantee contract ever signed in Africa in the amount of $200 million. I'm not going to say much. I'm going to give, we'll meet in 2 hours' time in the press room. You trusted AFIS, and history has proven you right. Dear partners, dear participants, we have to continue building together this platform. At this point in time, I'm going to say thank you to our faithful partners and to our new partners as well. And I have to say thank you to AFC in particular, that is constantly working towards developing this sector to a world-class level. And I think the best person to say this is none other than the Vice President for the Africa region at AFC. Please, could you give a resounding round of applause to Mr. Sérgio PIMENTA. His Excellency, the President of the Republic, Her Excellency, the Prime Minister, Her Excellency, the Speaker of the National Assembly, distinguished ministers, governors, dear friends, dear partners of Jeune Afrique Media Group, ladies and gentlemen from the financial press, all protocols observed. Thank you very much, and permit me, on behalf of the international group, to welcome you to this edition of AFIS. It's a great pleasure for me and a great honor to welcome you today here. This year, and for the 2nd consecutive year, the event is organized here under the aegis of Togo, and we have Jeune Afrique Media Group and AFC supporting them. So please permit me to, first of all, speak to the Togolese authorities for the trust that they had, and also for the Jeune Afrique Group for the support that they continue to extend to us. Please, and I'm very happy to note that you are more today than the last time. Thank you so much for the increasing interest that you have for the growth of the financial sector in Africa. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. We are meeting here in a very difficult context, and I think the video and the titles that we saw at the beginning of this conference proves the challenges facing all of us. Like the other parts of the world, Africa is living through the reality of slowing down of global financing, COVID, inflation in the West, and climatic changes have impacted economies on the continent of Africa. Faced with these challenges, all hands have to be on deck to ensure the advent of a sustainable and good economy in Africa. So we have to support the emergence of a more inclusive Africa and a more connected one. We have to be sure of food security. We also have to make sure that the continent has power supply so that we can arrive at the expected objectives. So how can the African financial market meet these challenges? The World Bank that we belong to in Marrakesh adopted 5 pillars: human capital, planets, digitalization, and 2 others. And in tune with these 5 pillars, we can establish 3 priority areas. Firstly, financing of SMEs. We are all aware that these entities are the backbone of the economic development in Africa. They create a lot of jobs and make room for innovations, and they also create an economic ecosystem. And this means that the continent has to organize itself to have structural systems that can lead to development. And we take all these considerations very seriously because we at AFC take SMEs very seriously. In the last financial year, we invited more than $2 billion in SMEs in Africa. We're looking at Togo, from the east, west, and every part of the continent. We have a financial institute where we ensure that those of you here can benefit from it. And since we are here, I should tell you that $500 million were invested here in Togo together with our financial partners to support Togo. I'm going to give you an example. Jeune was chosen in 2022 within the framework of what we refer to as local champions. And this is a fine example to show that we're ready to support SMEs. The financial sector is increasingly committed in this sector, and it's good to note that the digital channel has also made its impact in fintechs, insurance companies, and SMEs have also benefited from digitalization that have made the activities and operations better. So the second area of intervention has to do with trade financing, especially continental trade, which is another way of supporting SMEs. So if we want to make a success of the African continental free trade area where trade is concerned, we have to make financing available. In this regard, we're working on 2 areas that is going to make it possible for us to support African SMEs, and while drawing attention to the obstacles that Africa can experience. The African Continental Free Trade Area is not only the responsibility of the public sector. Private sectors has also to contribute because we have observed that we collected data with the WTO, and ECOWAS could increase. Trade within ECOWAS could rise by more than 88%, and if financial partners could support trade financing. And you can rely on us because in the last financial year, we invested more than $1 billion in financing trade on the continent, and we intend to invest $30 million in the next number of years. And we are interested and working towards ensuring that inter-African trade is handled by Africans. And another area that we consider a priority is the financing of climate transition. And according to studies, Africa will need more than $200 million based on what we saw with the meeting in Africa. And unfortunately, what was able to be raised was about $3 billion or so. And based on the studies we have conducted, we noted that $100 billion would be the starting point. And now we have seen that the stakes are very high, and we have to work towards mobilizing resources at the rates required. So we have to raise our ambitions, and here we're looking forward to seeing creativity, innovations, and mobilize more efforts towards project financing. And what we finance a project in Egypt, and that has a strong impact on the climate under SFE. Now we are looking at the energy sector, and we have invested more than $200 million, and we expect to do more. You can understand that if the challenges are many, the opportunities are just as many. So the financial sector, especially private financial sector, has a responsibility to help this continent take advantage of opportunities. That is why I'm very happy that you are so many. And I observe that there's a lot of expertise, experience, and new ideas in this hall. And this was testified last year. And I look forward to having the same success this year. And you can count on us at the AFC to support these innovations and developments. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your contributions. And the meetings are going to be very, very interesting. So I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Essozimna. I take the opportunity to say thank you to all members of the AFC team for their support in making AFIS a reality. Dear participants, I think you have received a very warm welcome in Togo, because this country aims to be a hub for financial solutions. So I'm now inviting all of you to give a warm welcome to the President of Togo, His Excellency Mr. Faure GNASSINGBÉ.
Merci. Merci beaucoup. Merci. Chers amis, dear friends, invited guests, dear participants, I would like to thank you for your presence. I would like to thank the Jeune Afrique group and IFC for organizing this meeting. AFIS 22 focused on crisis and crisis management. The very first panel was entitled Transforming African Finance in Times of Crisis. Today, we are opening a new chapter. The topic of crisis is giving way to that of opportunities. The first year's panel topic was building a world-class African financial industry, a 1.5 trillion opportunity, and this embodies this new dynamic. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by asking you a few questions. Well, of course, the standardization of prices has had a lot to do with this. After months of concern, inflation is finally coming down, and commodity prices, particularly food and energy, are easing. This decline in inflation is being seen around the world. The IMF's last projection suggests that price rises will have to reach 6.8% in 2023 before falling back to 5.2% in 2024, a clear improvement on the 8.7% rate recorded last year. Better still, the decline in inflation is particularly pronounced in the WEMU region. Inflation rate fell to 2.7% in September 2023, a remarkable performance when compared with the peak of 8.8% recorded in August 2022 and the rate of 6% in January 2023. More generally, the dynamism of our economies gives us cause for optimism. In West Africa, data for the 2022-2023 agricultural season shows a 9.7% increase in food production within the Union, reaching an impressive 72 million tons. Given the crucial importance of agriculture, which employs 65% of our workforce and contributes 40% of our GDP, such achievements can only encourage us. Our industrial sector is not to be neglected. The Port of Lomé is more dynamic than ever, suggesting good economic performance for the entire sub-region. Well, this is not just in West Africa. The entire West Africa has set off resolutely on the path of recovery. Over the coming year, the region should see significant rebound, with growth estimated at 4.0%. In the long term, the free trade area will be able to anchor this recovery in the long term, at a time when part of the world is turning away from the promise of trade. Our historic pact has created the largest free trade agreement in the world, both in terms of population and surface area. It brings together nearly 1.5 billion people in 55 countries, forming an economic entity whose GDP is comparable to that of India. But today, it is the financial tech sector that is of interest to us. First of all, we should note the continued strength of the lending business, which demonstrate the resilience of the sector despite a clear tightening of credit conditions. In West Africa, private sector financing remain buoyant. Loans to the economy grew at an annual rate of 11.6% in August 2023, after 15.5% the previous month. More generally, the financial services market in Africa is expected to grow significantly in the coming years, with annual growth of around 10%, reaching around $230 billion in revenues by 2025. This development is largely driven by the rapid adoption of fintechs, supported by increased smartphone ownership, lower internet access cost, and a young, fast-growing, and increasingly urbanized population. So, since the pandemic, the sector has been extraordinarily dynamic. Between 2021 and 2023, the number of African fintechs grew by 17%, and there are now more than 600. So, the future looks bright. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, pessimist feeling persists across the continent. Last week, a French newspaper, Le Monde, even reported on mediocre economic prospects south of the Sahara. Mediocre economic prospect south of Sahara. Such a discrepancy with the reality on the ground is staggering. Unfortunately, the consequences of this negative bias are not just symbolic. In real terms threatens our ability to finance our development. Can I have a glass of water? Someone can be kind enough to give me a glass of water. The most eloquent example of this problem is, of course, sovereign ratings, which tend to be systematically unfavorable to African countries. These ratings are often influenced by countries' wealth than by the real risk of default. This double standard was striking during the COVID-19 pandemic. Most of developed countries did not suffer a downgrade, which enabled them to continue to access financing despite a significant increase in their debt. I would want to emphasize that this handicap suffered by Africa in terms of a sovereign rating does not date back to COVID-19 crisis, and it is not limited to a comparison between developed and developing countries. Historically, our country or our continent has always faced a significant handicap, even compared to other developing countries. Let's take the example of Angola. Here is a country that has not defaulted on its bonds since the Civil War, and yet, in 2017, it was forced to pay significantly higher interest rates than Argentina, which issued a 100-year bond a year after defaulting and 3 years before defaulting again. This bias is not limited to rating agencies. Indeed, even for an equivalent rating from these agencies, an African country is often forced to offer higher interest rates. Let's take the example of South Africa and Brazil. With the same rating, international investors impose more onerous conditions on South Africa. So no African country has issued a Eurobond since June 2022. A direct consequence of this bias is, of course, an increase in the cost of private finance for African governments. But it has a wider impact on the financing of our economies as a whole. Investors take credit rating into account before making decisions because it serves as a proxy for assessing the economy as a whole. This situation is of particular concern to me because the private sector is set to play a critical role in financing African development. My country has always been resolutely committed to this part, and our ambition is to finance half of our Roadmap 2025 through private investment. Ladies and gentlemen, more generally, the contribution of the private sector will be critical in fighting climate change. As recalled by Mr. Sérgio Pinonto, because by 2030, investment needs for climate change mitigation in emerging and developing economies are estimated at around $2,000 billion per year, and 80% of these investment needs to be financed by the private sector. It is therefore crucial to stress that our collaboration with the private sector is not just a strategic choice, it is an imperative necessity, given the stagnation of public assistance to development. Now, OECD data for 2022 speaks for itself. While net investment flows have increased overall in 2022 by 15.3% in real terms, preliminary data indicate that net bilateral flows to Africa have fallen by 7.4% in real terms. I would therefore like to stress here that if indeed we want to take full advantage of the opportunities on the African continent, we must rectify this bias in perception. It goes without saying that part of this effort must be undertaken at national level. In particular, governments have the responsibility to reassure the private sector and to be transparent and responsive. Reassurance is also the aim of the Conseil de concertation État secteur privé, a platform set up by the government to conduct an ongoing dialogue with our investors. Reassurance also means ensuring the security of our territory and our coast. And our countries need to add value to the opportunities given to our countries. This promotion, of course, applies to individual projects, as we do when the government meets with investors to finance specific projects. And we are all aware that these investors often complain about the lack of pipeline in our countries. However, beyond the promotion of isolated projects, it's essential to convey a long-term vision. This is why we've initiated the 2025 roadmap intended to serve as both a strategic guide and a project bank. I will conclude by saying that we cannot regain control of the African narrative without concerted action. I believe that it is of paramount importance for Africa to collectively regain control of its narrative. With this in mind, Togo has long been committed to building Pan-African unity and making it a reality. It was in Lomé in 2000 that the founding agreements of the African Union were signed, and it is in Lomé that we will be holding the Pan-African Congress in 2024. And we initiated the setting up of ECOWAS in 1975, and we also contributed in the creation of the African Political Alliance, demonstrating our ongoing commitment to Pan-African strategic autonomy. And I'm therefore delighted that this subject of African cooperation is now a common thread running through our programs, covering topics as various as the green taxonomy in Africa, regulatory coordination in the fintech sector, and discussions on the establishment of a unified banking authority at continental level. For there is no valid reason why Africa should not take its rightful place on the global geostrategic chessboard. The continent accounts for 28% of the member states of the United States, and by 2050, Africa's population will make up 25% of the world's population. That proportion is expected to rise to 40% by 2100. Our voice must be commensurate with this future. Thank you, and enjoy your conference.
Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président.
His Excellency, President of the Republic, thank you very much. And also saying thank you for hosting this second edition here in Togo. And I know that AFIS is going to be hugely successful. With your speech, you set the tone for the panels that we're going to have. It's going to be moderated by one of the best business journalists of his time. I ask you to welcome Mr. Ramatoulaye.